Relax, man. Relax. Hey, get me an ambulance. Relax, man. Get me an ambulance here in the back. 613. Get me more units. It's okay. Therefore, in the rear.
Excuse me, sir. Can I please see this?
How many people you got shot?
I got one person shot.
Oh, can I please come see these, okay, please?
This shots fired by police. Shots fired by police.
What the fuck is... Can I,
Secure the weapon.
can I please see these, okay?
Hey, get back, get back. Where's it at?
Get me an ambulance in the back of the King.
What's the address?
Can I please see me, okay? Please? Can I see me?
What's the address?
It's 6124, but can I see me, it's okay?
Hey, get back in, get back in.
6124
Hey, don't move, brother.
King.
Okay, don't move.
6124 King. In the back.
Umbrella. She's up, she's up. Whole nother level of shit you can't even understand.
What is good, my people? We are live back again with another episode of The Forecast. So out in Houston, a 23-year-old brother by the name of Robbie Tolan was shot by police in his own driveway, getting out of his own car, walking into his own house. Now let's go back and see what this brother could have did that led to him getting shot by the police in his own driveway.
Anger is building up in a Dallas community this morning after a white police officer shot a black man in his own driveway. The victim is a former professional baseball player's son. His family claims it's a tragic case of racial profiling. Certainly from the outside, it would seem to be outrageous. CNN's Ed Lavandera is following the story live for us from Dallas. Ed, was this just a case of driving while black?
Well, that's clearly the question that a lot of people in this Houston suburb are asking this morning, and the allegations of racism and racial profiling are intensifying. The way Robbie Tolan's family describes it, he and his cousin were just walking up to their home after a late-night meal. So why is Tolan now hospitalized? A police officer's bullet lodged in his liver. It's a question sparking allegations of racism in this mostly white Houston suburb of Bel Air.
He was a victim of the worst case and the worst kind of racial profiling.
Tolan is the son of former Major League Baseball player Bobby Tolan. The 23-year-old spent a year playing with a Washington Nationals minor league team and recently played with the Bay Area Toros. Tolan's cousin says they had no idea the two men approaching them that night were cops.
We did not know it was a police officer. We just thought, who is this guy with this gun and this flashlight?
According to police, the officers thought the SUV the pair had just gotten out of was stolen. Relatives say Tolan's parents heard the commotion and came outside. Police acknowledge an altercation took place. Relatives say it involved his mother.
The cop, they said, pushed her against the wall, and her son was on his back at the time, and he raised up and asked, "What are you doing to my mom?" And the officer shot him while he was on the ground.
The car belongs to the Tolans. It wasn't stolen. Police say Robbie Tolan and his cousin were unarmed. As for the officer who shot him, he is white, a 10-year veteran with an excellent record. Police say they're looking into what happened, but deny any kind of racial profiling.
Anytime that someone is injured, we take it very seriously. And as far as any allegations of racial profiling, I'd probably say that that's not really going to float.
Robbie Tolan sits in a Houston hospital bed, and this son of a once prominent Major League Baseball player finds his own aspiring baseball career in jeopardy.
I'm not concerned about his career right now as a baseball player. I'm concerned about my son's health.
John, the officer who fired the shot has been put on administrative leave. There's an investigation, an internal police investigation going on, so the police department is no longer commenting on the case, as well as the Harris County District Attorney's Office there in Houston. They're also investigating to determine whether or not charges will be filed against this officer. John?
So this was this young man's own car, this SUV. The police say they thought that he was driving a stolen vehicle. Have they illuminated in any degree why they thought that particular vehicle was stolen?
Well, that's the million-dollar question right now, and that's one of the reasons why this police investigation is going on is to determine exactly why and how these officers came to determine why they believed this car was stolen and that these two men were car thief suspects at that point. That's the way officers were essentially viewing these two men at the time of the shooting.
We're just talking about making a snap judgment here. Do we know if they even ran the license plate to see if the car was stolen? Did they make a mistake?
Officers have been asked that question, and I think that's one of the things that they'll do in the investigation, go back and determine whether or not the officer in his patrol car had typed in the license plate number into the car and to see what kind of calls or radio transmissions had been made to get that kind of information. The police department there in Bel Air just hasn't offered any information as to what's been determined so far as to what this officer did.
So it certainly sounds like they've got a lot of explaining to do, though.
So this brother Robbie Tolan and his cousin Anthony Cooper were pulling up into their driveway after coming back from getting something to eat, when out of nowhere the police pulls up on them because they say they thought they were armed and in a stolen vehicle. Nobody called the police or anything. They just saw them and thought they looked suspicious. So the police had Robbie and his cousin face down on the ground when his mom and dad, who happens to be a former professional baseball player, heard what was going on and came outside. And as his parents were trying to talk to the police, apparently Officer Jeffrey Cotton got upset and ended up pushing his mother against the garage door. Now notice he pushed his mother and didn't push his father, but the police do admit that Officer Jeffrey Cotton did push his mother into the garage door. Now according to the police report, they say Robbie got up off of the ground, turned around, and Officer Jeffrey Cotton had no other choice but to shoot him. But according to Robbie, according to witnesses, according to forensic evidence, he was on his hands and knees and turned around and said, "Don't push my mother." He wasn't even close to the officer. But this cop, Jeffrey Cotton, still felt threatened and shot this brother in the chest.
There are now 3 separate investigations into a controversial police shooting outside Houston involving the son of a former Major League Baseball player. The 23-year-old, an aspiring ball player in his own right, remains hospitalized with a bullet lodged in his liver after an incident that's raised a lot of questions and outrage. NBC's Charles Hadlock reports.
Robbie Tolan had gone out for burgers with his cousin. After returning home, a Bel Air police officer approached them as they walked toward their house.
He didn't even put on his lights to say, "Hey, I'm a police officer." He came with us with a gun.
The officer accused them of driving a stolen SUV. The family's attorney says Tolan's mother tried to assure the officer that the vehicle was theirs. But the officer, he says, pushed her into the garage door. The family says Tolan, who was still on the ground, turned toward the officer.
He simply turned around and said, "Don't do that to my mother." He was probably 15 feet away from the officer at this point, who had just thrown his mother against the garage door. At that point, the officer drew his service revolver and shot him in the chest.
The vehicle turned out not to be stolen. Why they thought it was stolen, how they got a stolen report, I'm not clear yet.
Tolan is a minor league ball player, the son of Bobby Tolan, who played for the St. Louis Cardinals and the Cincinnati Reds and made it to the World Series.
The Bel Air Police Department know what they did.
The Tolans say what happened in the front yard of their mostly white neighborhood is a clear case of racial profiling.
I think there is no question but that this has to do with racial profiling. There's simply no other explanation for it.
What is a great city in all respects.
The city council has offered its sympathies.
My thoughts and prayers have been with the Tolan family and Mr. Tolan every day and will continue to be.
The shooting is the first big case to cross the desk of Harris County's newly sworn-in district attorney.
I just want to make it clear that as an independent investigation, each side should be assured that it will be fair.
Bel Air police say that what happened in the Tolans' front yard is not a case of racial profiling, but they've declined to discuss the shooting, a shooting that has left a once promising athlete with an uncertain future.
Now, of course, Officer Jeffrey Cotton feared for his life, and he had no other choice but to shoot this man. The police called it a tragedy and then gave him his paid vacation. But the whole time they adamantly rejected that this had anything to do with racial profiling. Of course, the cops in Houston don't see color and would never racially profile anybody. They would have thought anybody riding in a nice neighborhood with a nice car, pulling up to a nice house, was armed and in a stolen car. It just happened to be two brothers this time. But it could have happened to anybody. But eventually, Officer Jeffrey Cotton was charged with aggravated assault. But a jury made up of 7 white women, 3 white men, and 2 black women reached a verdict of not guilty, not only on the assault charges, but not guilty on any charges. Not on deadly conduct, not reckless endangerment. That this cop didn't do anything wrong and everything he did was completely justified. And then outside of the courtroom, Jeffrey Cotton said, "I'm glad all of this is over and I just want to get back to work," which he eventually did. And right after the criminal case, they threw out the federal civil lawsuit based on qualified immunity. They had to take their case all the way to the Supreme Court just to get their civil lawsuit reinstated.
Before Trayvon Martin, before Michael Brown, and before Sandra Bland, there was Robbie Tolan. He was gunned down in front of his own home after a confrontation with a Bel Air police officer back in 2008. The officer was cleared of all charges, but Tolan got some justice in a civil case that went all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. The High Court ruled in his favor. Now, almost 10 years later, Robbie is telling his story in his own words with a new book, and he's here to join us tonight. I want to welcome you to The Factor and talk about your new book, No Justice. What will we learn in this book that we didn't already know about your case, with you being right here in Houston?
I think, you know, people know the general story. They know the headlines, the bullet points, but, you know, they don't really know the underbelly about, you know, how we, you know, went to get justice and went about getting justice. You know, they don't know, they may or may not know that my parents sold their home in Bel Air to pay for the appeal for the Supreme Court. They don't know that the lawyer, the appellate attorney, Martin Siegel, worked for over a year without getting a single dime because he believed in the case. Just some of the other, you know, we had a falling out with our old attorneys. You know, just little stuff like that. They don't really know. But now everything is concluded, and so we can finally put pen to paper and tell the whole story.
You had one of the few cases that actually made it to the U.S. Supreme Court, but your book is called No Justice. Why?
Well, I don't consider it. Well, you know, the Supreme Court ruling was precedent setting, and that was, you know, obviously a win. But just, you know, because this type of thing is still happening. You know, from Michael Brown to Sandra Bland to you know, Tamir Rice. I mean, the list goes on and on. It's still happening. It doesn't seem like we're making strides towards stopping this epidemic. But so I think that was the driving force behind the title, No Justice.
When people read this book, what do you want them to walk away with? What kind of knowledge, what kind of information about you?
You know, that I think the resilience. You know, this book has a lot to do with my mom, man. She was a absolute terror in the courtroom, in the fight for justice. And so I want them to know about that, the resilience, that this could happen to anyone, because, you know, just like everyone else, you know, oh, that's not going to happen to me. I live in a nice neighborhood, and I thought the same thing. But, you know, if it could happen to you, it could happen to anyone. And I want this to be a call to action for people. I want people to say, okay, you know, enough is enough. You know, 9 times out of 10 when you hear stories of racial profiling, more specifically about police shootings, the victims are no longer with us. Their stories are told posthumously. And so, you know, here, the one of very few to live and tell his own story. And so I want this to be a call to action.
It took years of fighting and getting it all the way to the Supreme Court just to reach a financial settlement of $110,000 in a federal civil lawsuit. Not even for any kind of punishment for the cop, but just a lawsuit settlement against the city for being shot by a cop in your own driveway. Now, it didn't matter if he was an athlete. It didn't matter if his dad played in the World Series. It doesn't matter if you have money or not. If you're driving a nice car in a nice neighborhood, you're more likely to be racially profiled. I've seen it all the time. Cops either think you're a drug dealer or that you're in a stolen car or riding in the neighborhood looking to rob somebody. And the people who say, well, if you just work hard, you can overcome racism. If you just play by the rules of the system from within the system, then you'll be all right. That sounds good until you're riding past the police in a really expensive car and they pull you over because you look suspicious and you're probably armed, even if you're in a state where you're allowed to have guns. Or if you're standing in the front yard of your really expensive house and somebody calls the police on you because you look suspicious and they arrest you anyway, even though it's your own house. Or if one of your parents were a professional athlete and you live in a nice neighborhood driving a nice car, you can still be shot in your own driveway. As long as we're subject to their laws and their punishment, then nothing is going to change. They are in charge of our education, of what we learn. We don't even learn the right diet we're supposed to be eating, which foods work better for us and which don't. The schools our children go to is designed to be a pipeline right to the prison. Not only have our history, our language, our traditions have been taken from us, but a European mentality has been instilled into us. We can easily defend this system before we can come together to defend ourselves from this system. And we try to avoid the angry black man stereotype, but in actuality, we should be angry. After all of this time, after everything that's happened, we should be angry. And we should use that anger to change it, to do what we have to do, to come together, to put aside whatever differences that we have. I don't know how much evidence it takes for us to do what we have to do, but as long as we're subject to their laws and their system, and we don't create our own laws and enforce our own system, then the same thing will continue to happen over and over and over, and we'll still be having the same discussion 100 years from now.
Only on Fox tonight, he was gunned down by a Bel Air police officer, and his case made national headlines. And now it's in the national spotlight again.
And now Robbie Tolan is speaking on television locally for the first time about the case that changed his life forever. Isaiah Carey is here with the exclusive interview. Isaiah?
Well, guys, this is an interview we've all wanted to get for quite some time. Now, when you first meet Robbie Tolan, you expect him to be bitter about that episode in his life that left him hospitalized for more than a month. But you find a man who's found a mission to help others, and now he's doing that on a national TV show that will debut next week. It was a shooting that enraged a nation and left a rising minor league baseball player longing for justice.
It angered me, but it just kind of made me sad more than anything, you know, that this could happen and people will not be held accountable.
It was in 2008 when Robbie Tolan was shot in his parents' front yard by a Bel Air police officer. Tolan's attorneys say he was a victim of racial profiling.
You know, I lived in a very affluent neighborhood. I was from a certain background, and I said, oh, that, you know, it's unfortunate, it's tragic, but that probably won't ever happen to me. And it did, and so it was just kind of an eye-opener.
Very aggressive.
Didn't identify himself?
No, sir. Not at all. Not at all.
That's why Tolan is appearing in this episode of the national TV show, The Injustice Files on Investigation Discovery. The episode, Hood of Suspicion, takes a look at several cases, from Trayvon Martin to Robbie Tolan. Keith Beauchamp is a host and executive producer.
We chose 3 particular cases to focus on that would somewhat give you a little background about racial profiling, one, as well as stand your ground laws, and show how those stand your ground laws actually discriminates against African Americans.
Beauchamp says Tolan's case falls under the category of racial profiling, a white police officer who shoots a black man in a well-to-do community. The TV host says he wants to share the story that shocked a nation. Sergeant Jeff Cotton, the cop accused of shooting Tolan, was cleared and returned back to the beat in Bel Air without missing a beat.
The family hasn't really gotten closure. No one was held accountable for what happened to Robbie. you know, I felt the need of giving them a platform on my show.
Beauchamp says the episode, which airs February 13th, is designed to get people talking, enlighten some, and educate others that there's still a lot of work to do on race relations in this country.
I was angry for a while, and you know, it's easy to be angry. It's real easy to be angry and bitter about it, but you know, that's really no way to live.
In the meantime, Tolan, who's now 27, is in a different place. He sets his sights on a bigger picture, using his voice and his once victimization to help others who may not see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Thankfully, I'm still here to do God's work. So I think helping other people will receive justice, will give me justice as well.
The U.S. Supreme Court reinstates a lawsuit filed by a Bel Air man shot by police on the porch of his family's home.
For 7 years, they have been in and out of court after Tolan was shot in his parents' front yard.
He sued the Bel Air Police Department and Sergeant Jeffrey Cotton, but a U.S. district judge ruled Tolan did not prove Sergeant Cotton had violated his constitutional rights. The decision was upheld by the U.S. Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, but today the U.S. Supreme Court reinstated Tolan's case.
The lawsuit claims Tolan's civil rights were violated and that he was racially profiled.
We need to continue to work to affect change. Until that happens, young black men unarmed are going to keep getting shot until we do something about it.
Well, joining us now is Marion via Polycom. Marion, you took this battle to the Supreme Court, and who wrote the ultimate opinion?
Judge Scalia, who it was his only vote for a civil rights case in the United States Supreme Court.
You were disappointed with the settlement itself, but you do think the case has set a precedent for future families, so you think that's an important finding?
Absolutely. The way it's going to help families is that now the courts cannot use summary judgment and give police officers qualified immunity simply because they are police officers. That has been used to help all cases. It's Tolan versus Cotton is now case law. It's a law.
Well, and that's a very important finding.
I've received a letter addressed to my son, Jeffrey Berg, and to the lawyers in this case from the city of Bel Air through their lawyers. They have threatened us by telling us that we should not be talking publicly about this case. I cannot tell you how adamant the law firms and the Tolan family who are involved in this case are in speaking truth to power and telling the truth about what happened in Bel Air December 31st to Robbie Tolan. We won't be silenced. We will not allow a second attack by the city of Bel Air on the Tolan family by threatening us and telling us that we are acting in some way unethically by telling the truth about what happened. So I have a message to Mayor Siegel in Bel Air.
We went to the Supreme Court and we got the first unanimous decision in the Supreme Court in 13 years. That case is going to help others to file lawsuits against police brutality. We can't be afraid to fight. We can't be afraid to stand. We have to fight for our kids. I mean, think about it. I think about these little boys that just started school this year. They're in first grade, kindergarten. Do you know if we don't get this straight, they're going to still be dealing with this? The time is now.
Just speak the truth and speak our hearts regarding our precious president.
A year into his presidency, and these Dallas women are still thanking God for Donald Trump.
I know that God is the one who ordained him to be in this position.
Linda Churchwell and these other ladies all voted Trump. They like his conservative beliefs.
He has appointed a conservative SCOTUS. He has stood up for pro-life. He does stand up for the freedom of religion and the freedom of churches.
Does that wipe the slate clean then for you?
Whenever anyone accepts Christ into their heart and life and asks for forgiveness of their sins and makes him Lord, everybody's slate is wiped clean.
So it's no surprise this group couldn't care less about Trump's alleged affair with porn star Stormy Daniels back in 2006.
Do you care if your president had an affair before he was president?
No. Not if it's before. His base doesn't care about that. We care about jobs. We care about the economy, safety. That's what we care about. It's not relevant.
It doesn't matter because that's what Christianity is about. It's all about forgiveness. It's all about new beginnings. It's all about starting over. So it is irrelevant to me about what he did in 2006.
Do you all look to your faith?
Absolutely.
They agree with evangelical leader Tony Perkins that as long as Trump keeps pushing forward his conservative agenda, he deserves a pass, or a, quote, mulligan, as Perkins puts it.
The whole concept is mercy and grace. That's what Christianity is about. That's what those preachers and pastors represent, grace. They use the word mulligan, but it's about grace.
So a mulligan is grace.
They were using sports
I've
words.
never really heard that term before. Randy, we all have gotten a mulligan because of Christ Jesus. And so that's the bottom line.
And these women also agree with Reverend Franklin Graham, who says Donald Trump is a changed man.
This man, who is a successful businessman, did not have those people praying for him daily like he does now. He has transformed, even in the year that we have seen him, from a brash New York person to the president that we are proud of today.
I think we're all different people today than we were in 2006. He's a father, he's a grandfather. When you have children, the way you look at the world changes.
But when you look at evangelical Christianity, it's about family, it's about being faithful, and yet this doesn't seem to bother any of you.
Well, you know what bothers me are these stories that detract from all the good things he's doing for the American people. Instead of hearing that, we're hearing old news from someone that's not really that credible, from a stripper porn star.
He is doing the best job that we've ever seen.
So proud.
For a president. And I
In
can
a short time.
stand proud as an American again.
Among this group of Christian women, at least, Donald Trump can do no wrong.